It was a normal sunny day, everyone was going about their business, and in one of the buses, a terrifying atmosphere began to reign. The main character, Kim Chin, was especially uneasy. The other people on the bus noticed one thing, and someone asked, "Do they film movies here? What is that?" In front of them stood a goblin with an axe in his hand. They thought it was just a doll, but he attacked them along with his brother Stand. They knew horror on this normal day. Hoojin saw hell, and while screams were heard throughout the bus, one of the passengers decided to call the police, but suddenly something rushed past the level of the heads of the people. Stingat, high speed, seeing a head fall to the floor, one man screamed loudly in fear, and the goblins fell on the body and began to hit it with axes. People watched this in horror, and Hin could not calm down because he knows what will happen next. Almost everyone on this bus won't survive for a minute. It's a massacre, also children and adults. Without any exceptions, % of the population of Seoul will be wiped out. Will he be able to survive here? Unfortunately, the value of his gaming talent is 0. He is a talentless player. Jonggo-su the year, there was an exam that day, and as soon as it was over, people went outside to have a snack and started discussing the results with each other. One of them told his friend that the exam was too difficult. It was his 3rd attempt. His friend simply suggested that he forget about preparing to become a civil servant and look for a job. MC was also among the examinees. He is years old studying, trying to pass the civil servant exam, and has already spent years on it. He's an ordinary person with no gaming talent. Years ago, when the gates to Seoul opened, terrible events swept through the city. A handful of survivors awakened and began to call themselves players. He also had a dream of becoming a player, but he gave it up long ago due to lack of talent. Now all his thoughts are occupied with the exam. He got himself some food, and at the next table, they started discussing Gwaken's videos from yesterday, and the guy said that he was crazy. How can he fight so well? His friend laughed and noted that this is why they call him a god. He is so jealous of him. He would be like that too if he had talent. His friend said that they are ordinary people, so they can only take the civil service exam. He noticed Hubchin and recognized him. He immediately asked his friend if he knew about that guy's talents. It is said that in the past he took the player's ability test and collected talent panels, which became a record in Korea. His friend was very surprised, and then he continued saying that he is called a dead genius. His friend said that thesis just rumors. Why would he sit here and take the exam? Then he told him that it seems they discovered his talents. Too late, such bad luck. As far as he heard, these talent panels were found already during the additional test. His friend was surprised and said that it was incredible. He had a chance to turn his life around. He agreed with him and said that usually talent panels close somewhere at years old, and he was already. You could say that he lost his future after listening to them. MC told them in his mind that he knew it very well. Without them, he knew that he had no chance to become a player. 7 years ago, as a last chance, he took the retest. This is a government sponsored test that allows you to determine the presence or absence of talents during the test. You can see the total number of talents and evaluate the open ones, but he was left with only one for him. This result was worse than no talent at all. Black. Then he did not understand anything. He did not understand why the head of the personnel department of the Player Association came to personally hand him the results and wished him luck on the civil servant exam. He only graduated from high school. He was not good at anything in particular. He hoped to become a civil servant player, but he was met with failure after failure. The lives of talented players are very different from the lives of ordinary people. Like its difference between hell and heaven. Players were praised, while people like him were belittled. So the empty hopes of becoming a player are too much of a luxury for him. He would rather go home and study more. He no longer expects anything from tomorrow. When he returned home, he heard the drunken shouts of his neighbors in the entrance and went. In Tohei's apartment, there were unwashed dishes in the sink and a photo of his family on the table. He sat down to study and turned on a video that told about the terrible events that occurred at the beginning of the cataclysm on April th. The cataclysm began in Jonggo. The lesson will begin with the primordial fog in Seoul, resulting in death sort of affected. In fact, the entire area was close to total annihilation. When he first saw that primordial fog, he couldn't even stand on his feet. Hucken thought that this person Mon played a big role in starting the cataclysm years ago, and has now become a world-famous player. In his video, The player said that whether it was then or now, he can say one thing with absolute certainty. Effort is more important than talent. He is a live example of this, and he will only get stronger. Mick wondered if his efforts were really not enough. He immediately slapped himself in the face. Throwing these thoughts away now is not the time to think about such useless things. He does not want to focus on things that can no longer be changed. If he had talents he could awaken as a player, receive an offer from the Guardian, and make his life worthy. He often has the thought that he is the only one to blame for everything. He took out an envelope with a letter and read it. It was a farewell letter from his mother. She died of an illness, and his older sister wanted to escape poverty and got a job at a semiconductor factory, but she only got leukemia. He must succeed for the sake of his family. He has no talent, no money, no connections. He failed the exam 3 times. What is he lacking? When did it all go wrong? He thought he tried his best, but it didn't seem like it. However, will his tomorrow change? If he tries harder, if his life changes until the very end, then what should he do? He quietly whispered that he was so lonely, and at that moment, the time on the clock changed, and a bright flash appeared. Soon it was morning. The sunlight filled the entire room, and Hoojin woke up. He got up and wondered what time it was. There was a midterm assessment today. He went to bed early, but still overslept. He needed to quickly take a shower and go to the academy. What time did they usually hold the assessment? Once he was done with his morning routine, he went to the bus stop, and the electronic board announced that bus he needed would be arriving soon, or to be precise, in minutes. While Hukin was waiting, he looked around and thought that he didn't know why, but this day felt strange to him, but he couldn't figure out why. Something was just different from a normal morning. Maybe it was his mood. His bus arrived, and he went inside, thinking that it didn't matter, had better look at his notes on the way to the academy. He walked towards an empty seat, while listening to the conversations of the other passengers. Ash took his seat. He heard someone talking about a new song by Pink Velvet, and thought, is that old group popular again? It's just amazing, but it's hard for him to tell, since he doesn't watch TV. He took out his notes, and wondered where he was years ago. The disaster happened in Jongo. After that, the bus moved and pulled away from the stop. While he was studying his notes about the primeval fog, people were chatting about the weather, and suddenly, one of the passengers let out a surprised sigh, asking, what is this? He immediately looked up, and one of the passengers looked out the window, asking where did this impenetrable fog come from. The weather forecast did not say anything like this. Along with the fog came a stench, as if they were in a sewer. MC covered his nose and realized that something was wrong. There was such a disgusting smell. Suddenly, all the passengers' phones rang at the same time. Looked down with concern and saw an emergency notification on the screen. Today, April th. There is a very thick fog which may cause an accident on the roads, so drivers should be careful with each passing second. Hukin's anxiety grew. He began to understand why today was so strange. Did he really travel back in time years? He quickly compared all the events that had happened with those he had studied in class, and realized that today was that day the cataclysm began. He raised his worry gaze and looked out the window, thinking that the entire Zongo Guangwamen was filled with fog and stench. He looked at his notes. There were signs of the beginning of thacatism written there. The smell of sewage, emergency messages, all over Seoul. He thought that if this was all true, out of people would die that day. Percent chance that he will die at sunlight suddenly disappeared, and impenetrable darkness fell. Meanwhile, MC was very nervous. He returned to the past also. He knows what will happen next. Suddenly, a system window popped up in front of him which asked the players to wait. Minute passed, and the system notified all the players that the training would start soon. Years ago, first training began in Jongdo. Monsters suddenly poured out of the dungeon, which led to a brutal massacre. No chance of resistance. The cataclysm that lasted a week later, called training, or open beta almost. People died in this area alone. The chance of survival is about %. It was one of the worst days in human history. However, later people appeared who were called players. They quickly suppressed the monsters, and the disaster in Jongo was gradually sorted out. Guides for specific locations and player battle records began to appear, which made it possible to create a virtual dungeon for working out strategies. The world began to recover from the cataclysm, Hin remembered many raid records and went through virtual dungeons. Hundreds of times. There are few people who understand this incident better than him, and although he could not become a real player, he still continued to memorize raid tactics and go through virtual dungeons without much sense, because there he could be the best player in the world. The system warned about the imminent start of training. An MC thought that notifications appeared after the start of the cataclysm. He only knew about them in theory, but now he sees them personally. Did he really go back to the past? Suddenly the bus shook, people screamed in fear, and someone asked, did they crash into something? Because of the complete darkness, they could not see what was happening outside, and Hoojin became nervous. He needled himself to calm down. This had happened before. It seemed like the others hadn't received the notification, which meant he was the only player here. He would have to use all the information he could to survive. First he needed to tonalize the situation. Suddenly the system reported that an unknown observer was interested in him and was watching him. He thought it was a guardian, and then the system reported that the unknown observer wanted to give him an open beta bonus. He was very surprised, Bithus, and thought, do they give bonuses to unknown rankers? Guardians are creatures that watch over players. Each person's fate is decided by what bonuses or privileges the guardians decide to give them. They are in a dimension that is one level higher than the players, so they use a nickname to communicate with them. The system reported that he received Anapen beta bonus, the eye of a cold-blooded observer. He thought it was so strange. Perhaps it was because of receiving the bonus, but he suddenly felt calm, as if he himself had become an outside observer of what was happening and was watching everything from a third person. The system started the countdown and said that the training will start in seconds. Meanwhile, the bus driver apologized to the passengers and said that the fog is too thick to continue driving, so they will have to get there themselves, of course. They were upset, and suddenly the MC loudly ordered them, Nato, get out and lie down on the floor. This is the only way to survive the system. Reported that an unknown observer is interested in them. Suddenly people noticed something amazing. A portal appeared right in the bus from which Enongel came out, and the system reported that mid-level administrators began to appear. People lingered surprised glances at her, and she greeted them, saying that her name is Sina. From this moment on, they enter the training. Meanwhile, Thisism informed Hoojin about the training quest he needs to hold out in the training zone. For days he cannot leave it. The number of survivors determines the further difficulty. He looked at this in shock and still could not believe it that he really returned to the beginning of the cataclysm. The excited voices of the passengers distracted him from his thoughts. They all did not understand what was happening and thought that this was the filming of some movie, and asked the girl to explain. Issei told them that during the training they need to use their powers to survive, and suddenly a loud thud was heard. A man hit the windshield of the bus and splattered everything with his blood, causing the people inside to scream in fear. Someone already wanted to call the police, and MC realized that this was the strategy after monsters. They throw corpses around too, cause fear. The system reported that screams and movements were detected. The Goblin army is getting excited. The first group of goblins is approaching. They begin to invade the Django district army. Goblins surrounded the bus and began to jump on the windows, scaring the people inside, and some of them climbed onto the roof. Someone wanted to open the door to get out, but he was quickly stopped, and then a loud thud was heard from above. A goblin hit the roof. Huan looked around and thought that there would be a massacre outside, so they needed to take shelter here. He would think about their chances of survival later, but now something else was important. The strategy against goblin attacks was something that the humans had learned through years of fighting. First of all, fighting them directly was like signing your own death warrant. Of course, in years they wouldn't be much of a threat, and he was unlikely to be able to defeat them. In training, goblins were several times stronger than a normal human, and they would soon break into the bus. At that moment, one of the goblins slammed a hammer into the door of the bus, breaking the glass, and the people panicked. MC tried to bring them to their senses by telling them to lie down and stay. But realizing that they were too scared, he told them to listen to him if they wanted to live. They didn't have much time, of course. No one was going to listen to him when there was a complete mess outside, and he realized that it was too late. There was nothing more he could do. The system reported that an unknown observer was watching his actions with interest. The status window and inventory were activated. He was surprised when heckled up the status window, and it appeared in front of him and showed his current stats. All of his stats were between and the highest number being for a spirit. He was very surprised that his stats were so high. He heard that even the King of Fists had an average of 9 during his training. Suddenly a scream came from the side, and realized that the goblins had started to break through inside. The monster broke the glass with a club, and 2 goblins jumped inside. And the guy who was close to the doors ran away in horror, but one of the goblins caught up with him and finished him off on the spot. And the second attacked another man. Several more monsters climbed into Thebes. They started killing everyone in a row, enjoying their screams, and suddenly one of them noticed Hookden, who was lying on the floor with his eyes closed. He poked him with a baton to check if he was alive, and when he did, he returned to his comrades. Hucken was glad that it worked, and the system reported that the cold-blooded observer's eyes effect had been activated. There are conditionally safe zones in the training, one of which is inside the bus. To fulfill the conditions of the safe zone, you need to stay in place. He was afraid that he might move and violate the condition, but he was able to calmly endure it. Most likely it was because of the bonus that the guard gave him. He does not know why he was given it, but it will be easier to hold out if the knowledge from the future does not deceive him. Then the goblin's first attack will last about minutes. They spent the first minutes searching and breaking into the bus, so he did not have to endure that long. Suddenly one of the goblins took a closer look at him. He grabbed his head and lifted him up, after which he licked his cheek with a laugh, and MC frowned. He needs to be patient. Heckan't move, there's not much time left. Suddenly the system window said that the brave Lion King wants to give him a chance. He was surprised that another guardian was interested in him, and the strengthening elixir that the brave Lion King sent him appeared in his hand, and then the system said that he expects courage from him.